contemplating the theme for today being healing the inner child. And for that, we need to learn to connect to this inner child, acknowledge this inner child, embrace this inner child. We'll hold this prana mudra, the combination of earth and water, where we can have this juiciness or plumpness or lubrication in our lives, and the resilience of youth that comes with a very healthy combination of earth and water called Kapha. That's how things sprout. That's how things grow, with earth and water. Of course, sunshine as well, but that's the foundation. So we know, or those who attended classes before know, that all of these elementals, they are our elemental ancestors. And depending on the imprints we carry, they can go out of balance in our system. We all know that we're over 70% water, and due to many reasons, that element can go out of balance. When we're not drinking enough water, that's quite commonsensical. We're dehydrated. That's why I joke in the teacher training, whatever people learn or not in the teacher training, I remind people to drink so much water that at least they won't be dehydrated if one hasn't picked up anything else from the teacher training. So one, of course, that element can go out of balance if we're not drinking enough water. And two, emotional nourishment is also very intimately connected with this water element. So if we didn't feel nourished as we were growing up, then we can feel out of balance in this second chakra region, connected to the element of water. It's like mother's milk, this liquid. Think of mother's milk, think of amniotic fluid. I was speaking to my mother a couple of days ago, and she had certain concerns about certain things happening with my brother. And I just remembered how lucky I was. I thanked her, not for this specific reason, but thanked her that she was such a nourishing human being. And I was breastfed for 3 years, which unfortunately is not very common these days. 3 months max, maybe. In India, I'm talking about. So in her generation, or in my grandmother's generation, they understood the value of this nourishment and this emotional energy that was passed on from mother to child. And that's why the mother was given a lot of support during that period, to be in her joy, to be in her fullness, to be in her stability. And my mother received it from her mother. So right from the Ayurvedic drinks that my grandmother made for her to the portions, my grandmother had a lot of recipes of these different combinations of herbs, especially after one delivered, gave birth to a child, to help the uterus, to help that. So my mother had that, the whole shebangs. And to this day, she attributes that to her feeling much stronger after the whole process. It almost forced her to go into a regime of self-care. So this capacity to nourish others is very intimately related, connected to our capacity to nourish ourselves. And both Ayurveda, both yoga speak about starting with the self. So if we want to go out into the world and be a blessing unto the world, then we have to be a blessing to ourselves first. We can't treat ourselves terribly and then say, hey, I'm here to serve the world. So the first step I'm going to talk about in working with the inner child is pacing. How do we pace ourselves? For my mother, for example, my grandmother set a pace, not because she wanted to control my mom, but that was the tradition. So she said minimum 40 days, my mom can't do anything exerting. And she had to have this in the morning, this in the afternoon, X stuff, all nourishing things. The baby will get a massage, an oil massage, and be stretched out and da-da-da for the first 40 days. And yoga, there's a certain set of principles to follow after childbirth, because they believed the mother was also rebirthing herself in some ways. Then for 3 months, they have a protocol. For 6 months, they have a protocol. For 1 year, they have a protocol. So they had a general pace they set for the mother and said, your mind might be in a rush to get everything done. Oh, I've given birth to the baby now. Now let's go back to work and conquer the world. But that's not what, tradition says. You need to first nourish yourself. Your body's carried this whole new life for 9+ months. To slow down, stop, rebirth. So it was so strict, I wouldn't say very strict, but very understood that the women whose mothers followed this Ayurvedic system had no choice. They just had to slow down and feel nourished and relax into that space. However, nowadays, there are no systems or guidelines to tell us, oh, you need to take it easy. Or if somebody says something to someone, it's taken as control. And that's why the control or the pacing needs to come, one, from educating ourselves, and two is internally tuning it. So the women had a choice then, apart from this general guideline, they had a choice and said, oh, do I want to do another 40 plus 40 days? They had a choice. Or do I want to stop with the first minimum 40 days? So similarly here, as we learn about our bodies, how much time it takes to regenerate certain systems, we can say, okay, we can do this for 21 days, 40 days, or I feel I have so much trauma that I want to continue this process of rebirthing myself, even though I haven't actually given birth to a baby, connecting to my inner child and constantly in this process of rebirthing, and choose the time and choose the space and choose the length of time. So of course, that takes a lot of self-awareness, a lot of awareness to say, these are my life circumstances now. I'm not going to bite off more than I can chew. So in the midst of all this, I can't say, oh, I'm going to just do processing work with my inner child. If I took on that too, I'd go a bit crazy. I have enough space only for what I'm doing now. So I have to have enough common sense or enough self-awareness to say, I'm not going to bite off more than I chew, or I have other things to do as well with certain areas of my life. And I can't say, okay, I'm going to commit to that. I have to be aware of the energy I have, the time I have, and commit to only one project at a time, depending on how much that project would take out of me. It's a very small project. Maybe I can do two, but this takes everything out of me. So I have to commit fully to this. And yet many times I've done the mistake in my younger years, in my 20s. I have committed to a lot of things because I am enthusiastic as a person. And I also see that many times that people do that, make that mistake, same mistakes I've made. And if there's not enough internal boundaries or awareness of internal trauma, then all the pain that's sitting deep within can come out in the most unexpected ways. So this is an important thing to understand when we're working with the inner child. And that inner child can start throwing a lot of tantrums or feel unloved or feel overextended or feel terrible or feel nobody loves me. A lot of these old emotions can come to the surface if we haven't taken care to pace ourselves. So it comes back all to pacing. If you're wondering why I'm giving you this whole story, it comes back to what simple concept of learning to pace ourselves, learning not to bite off more than we can chew. And this is so important when we work with the inner child. I was at an event a couple of days ago and I bumped into one of my dear students and she was talking about her younger daughter, saying how she has FOMO, this fear of missing out. She gets very upset when she's not able to go to this event and that event. And unfortunately, our minds are becoming trained for overstimulation, which is not at all a healthy place for working or healing the inner child, because then the mind is constantly on overdrive and the body cannot keep up. So again, it's like taking a little child and trying to make it go to a dance event and then a X event and then a party and whatever it is. Just think of stressing a child out. So let's sit with that and say, this week, how can we commit to one simple thing in our lives? And can we drop a few things that are not absolutely necessary or we haven't committed to and not take on more? And the Kapha helps us with that. The spacing, if we are grounded, if we are in our bodies, then we know it intuitively. But if there's too much Vata, Vata is this element of air and space. And space, if you think of it, is super expansive. It's really expansive. So our ideas can be very nice and expansive, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying don't have great ideas, but can we ground those ideas in the water and earth element? Now, that's the whole journey of working with the inner child.